don't think I ever met a simile I didn't like. It's a weakness at times, or often. Thank you, Connor and Mary, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, Alan and Lisa, and the Villanova Literary Festival. It's great to be here. It's great to be out in New York and getting some warm weather. And it's a real honor to be here and to be on this beautiful campus and to spend time with students this afternoon who were so smart and asked such great questions and were very patient with my long and meandering answers. So yeah, this book took me 6 years to write, and it's basically my exploration of fatherhood. And I have a father who is in his 80s now, and a son who's just about to become a teenager, and I'm kind of smack dab in the middle. So it was kind of my investigation of what it's like to be in the middle and to see one's father, go a bit into decline, and to see one's son kind of starting to become an individualized person, which is very interesting at age 13 as he approaches 13. And I'm going to read an Andy section from the book. It's really broken up into 3 sections. You have the father, Anne Dyer, then you have the 3 sons, Jamie, Richard, and Andy. And they all have kind of their moments in the book, and it's narrated by this character named Philip Tucker, who's a lifelong friend, and who was Andy's 5th grade teacher, which is something you should know for this part of her read. And you should also know that Andy has been kind of having an online flirtation with this older woman, this 24-year-old named Jeannie Spokes, who works at Anne Dyer's literary agent's office. And she and he have been having this kind of online flirtation. And it's starting to kind of move from the online into the real a little bit. And at this point in the book, Andy has been out the night before, and he's had a little too much to drink and to smoke a little bit of pot, and he's hung over in bed the next morning. And the night before, he'd become obsessed with Holst and the Planets, the music, and so he was playing that at the party on the stereo to everyone's great annoyance. There is some salty language in this section, so I hope that's all right in the Villanova library. But and sometimes I might just skip over a little section, and I will be jumping around just a tiny bit. From floor level, tucked within pants, the Hallelujah chorus sounded, courtesy of Andy's new ringtone, which was probably the most awesome ringtone ever, with its high holy majesty turning every phone call into a revelation, even if interrupting a half-asleep semi-erotic trending toward full-blown fantasy involving a girl with metamorphic eyebrows. Andy dragged his pants up. It was probably Jeannie Spokes. Andy? Oh, hey, yeah, hey, howdy. Sorry I missed you last night. Oh, he had invited her to the party, but she did not show up. Oh, yeah, hey, no problem, he said. Just a flyer, a reach out. Reach out? I've been in a weird mood lately, she said. No need to explain. I get into weird moods myself. I'd like to see you, she said. Yeah, sure. Like now, she said. Andy sat up as if barged in on her. Where are you? She asked. In bed, he said. Whatever agreeable noise she made wavered between a sigh and a purr, with Andy caught in the middle. Do you know where I am right now? She asked. At work? No. Andy's pulse rate was like an elbowing friend. Right outside my building? Try a museum. Okay, a museum. Try guessing which one. MoMA? Nope. Nope never sounded more bilabial. The Frick? Nope. The Whitney? The Guggenheim? Nope and nope. You're missing the obvious. The Tenement Museum, he said, proud of his flirty misdirection. I'm at the Met, you loser. And I'm standing in front of my favorite work of art. And I'm practically blushing. Practically blushing, Andy, like I'm the secret inspiration for this artist. I feel positively pinned between rough hands. Oh, Andy said, suddenly feeling very young. Now listen, I'll be here for the next, let's see, hour and 13 minutes. I'm not going to move an inch. I'm just going to stand here and wait and see if you can find me. Think of it as a game of hide and seek, and like any game, there's a prize for the winner. You think you're up for the challenge? After a pause that unpacked many thoughts, the ball peen of significance shattered all deliberation into a core instinct. Just move. And launched Andy from bed, and once launched into a state of panic, his hourglass head leaking sand into his empty, increasingly anxious stomach. Somewhere in the Met, he clarified. Yes. Like the Met on 80th and 5th with the nights and stuff? Yes, dude, what's that Met? Andy reanimated the clothes from last night. That's a big place, he said. It is. Andy stepped, wiggled. This water is... Alan, I can see where it kind of fell. It's very wobbly. Andy stepped, wiggled, stomped into his shoes. Any hints? No. No hints? No. Like maybe it's a painting? No hints. I guess it's a big place. And getting bigger by the second, Jeannie said, and she hung up. Andy stood there, bogged down by a quick strategy session concerning art history and the feminine spirit and the geography of the Met, and Jeannie's spoke's possible position within that landscape. Jeannie waiting for him, Jeannie perhaps ready, willing, and enabling for him in European paintings, in modern and contemporary art, in the Temple of Dendur, in Greek and Roman art, in arts of Africa, Oceania, and the Americas, arms and armor, ancient Near Eastern art, Asian art. Andy shook himself free and rushed from his room. He hustled from the apartment in hopeful pursuit of art. Dix, Bonnard, Poussin, Klimt, Munch, playing like innuendo in his head. And as he impatiently waited for the elevator, he called Doug Straff, who lived not far from the Met, and could easily wander into another person's misadventure. Where are you? Andy quickly opened with. You're never taking control of the stereo again. Doug was with him last night. I need a favor. Where are you? Doug? Doug? He lost the call in the elevator. Flores ticked down every number, firing a plosive curse from Andy. Doug had been his best friend since Buckley days, though Doug had departed in 6th grade for Indian Mountain and now went to Millbrook, and if his highest academic dream came true, he would finish up in Boulder. He was considered a terrible influence by parents and bore the brunt of much vestigial blame, like an overweight, overbred golden retriever with a drug habit. But he was always good company. All of your ideas were excellent ideas to Doug Straff. Doug, so what was up with that music? I was stoned. You were such a jerk about it. I know. You were like the listen, please. Listen. It's a very influential piece of second-rate music. Like every music score, there you go again. Whatever. Where are you right now? I'm in the park watching the kids in the playground. Remember that playground on 81st where I broke my nose? I'm sitting there watching the kids not break their noses, and I'm sitting next to this guy named London, right? Like the city, but his name isn't England, or I don't think it's England. Is it England? No, it's not England. It's Williams, London Williams, which is a cool name, and he has a son named Manchester. Manny for short, 6 years old, and Manny is definitely not breaking his nose today because Manny is a careful little kid. Right, Manny? Andy blew past the doorman and hurried north. Have you been smoking? Perhaps. It's not even noon. I knew. And the big deal is, I believe last night you were fairly levitated. You certainly had your head up, Uranus. It was Jupiter, and was I that bad? Besides the whole mind stereo thing, you were 100% outstanding. At one point, you had us all believing we were part of your massive deja vu. And you told us exactly what we were going to do next. And we believed you, man, or some of us believed you, or maybe just one of us, but it was genius. Andy cringed, oh God. No, it was superb. You kept the ball rolling way longer than anyone thought possible. People started to walk away, and you described them leaving like you were 5 moves ahead. I shouldn't smoke. Are you kidding me? You should smoke more. Just avoid the stereo. From 75th Street through the trees on the western edge of 5th, a partial view of the Metropolitan Museum opened up, and Andy remembered the point of his phone call. I need your help, he said, if you're not too incapacitated. I'm in. Excuse me, London. Later, Manny. Can you, meet me in front of the Met, right now? Like now? Yeah, pretty close to now, yeah. Got it, Chief. Up ahead, the Met slowly revealed itself, low-slung and massive, intimidating in its grand bureaucratic design, as if the world's most important mail was being sorted inside. But all Andy saw was a hiding place. He rushed past the fountain and up the broad steps where tourists mingled in a strange kind of order, like notes on a sheet of music. Looking for Doug, waiting for Doug, where the hell was Doug? Andy grabbed for his cell phone when he heard his name called and spotted his friend approaching, arms pumping faster than legs, like a salesman selling hurry. Hey, we have an hour. I packed you a bowl. In Doug's palm was a pipe the shape of a small wooden bird. I can't. It's the Met, man. I'd be scared to go in there not stoned. We don't have time. It'll take 2 seconds. I need to be focused. On what? I have like an hour to find this girl. A woman, really. She's 24, brownish hair, hair to here, chunky glasses. Cool chunky, though. Kind of looks like Heather Topol from Chapin, but better looking. Heather Topol, if Heather Topol had a fairy godmother, but the same sort of features, just better form. Sort of the most attractive version of the Heather Topol type. Doug stared at Andy. Screw it, Andy said. They sidled to the shady, less populated corner of the steps. So we're looking for a Heather Topol-like girl, Doug said, newly enthused. Andy nodded as he took a hit. And what happens when we find this Topolian girl? I get laid, came from Andy with a smoky smile. Laid as in bound, she goes, ow. That's my favorite part of the whole book. That's how mature I am. How much it was easy for me to write in the head of a 17-year-old. Andy nodded, took another hit. Right there in the museum? Andy squinted. No, you idiot. Or I don't think. That would be nuts. No way. Look, all I know is she's standing in front of her favorite work of art. That's the hint she gave me. I find that, I find her. You screw her? That's my guess. Doug refortified himself. I'm assuming European paintings, Andy said. Definitely. Like Renoir, Monet, Manet. Might be too obvious. Balthus, Duguay. I'll check that area, but I need you to cruise Greek and Roman, Egyptian. All those vases, Doug said. Exactly, it's a big museum. The American wing. It's a really big museum. Andy started to feel the task's thin air. Okay? Okay. Uncertain with how to start exactly, they both took one last hit until a hazy, if genuine, purpose sank in, and they marched into the museum, past security carrying the bags, into the great hall where pods of people crowd the information desk and the coat check and the circular seating areas. So many people. Class trips, group tours, a dozen buses cracked open and whipped up in this inverted bowl. Everyone's clothing just a little too bright. Everyone's shoes just a little too comfortable. People of every stripe, visitors from other countries, parents with children, families on vacation, tri-staters in for the day, college students, couples in love, voices, accents, languages, traveling up and around the rotunda and swirling in a batter of half-understood echoes. Andy rushed past them, disdainful of their blocking his way. He played the role of detective, and these folks belonged on the other side of the crime scene tape. So I'm looking for a Heather Topol-like girl, Doug clarified one final time. Yeah, standing in front of whatever she's standing in front of. Got it, I'm hitting Greece. Doug broke left toward Greek and Roman, while Andy flashed his membership card and bounded up the central staircase toward European paintings. Tiepolo's The Triumph of Marius grading him on the second floor. Andy pushing straight through the glass doors, excuse me, and sorry to a bundle of Asian women, into the first gallery of 19th century French, David and Delacroix. Andy paying no attention to the paintings, only to the crowds around the paintings. The death of Socrates getting the most eyeballs, but no genie among the mourners, so on to the next gallery. More French, Boucher, Grès, Fragonard, in a fruitless search for a gauzy portrait of a 24-year-old brunette with a crooked smile, titled, You Find Me, You Fuck Me. So Andy continued on, speed essential, though this time he was presented with a choice of staying straight or turning right, and Andy chose straight, cloué at the tour. But no further female illumination, only more galleries, more possibilities. Straight, left, right, the galleries opening up onto a maze of human-made beauty. But no genie, no hot breath hello. And the enormity of the situation, as well as the THC streaming through his blood, panicked him. There's no way, just no way, this place is too huge. As he tripped into 16th century Florentine, and Bronzino's portrait of a young man, which drew a swell of high school girls, Catholic judging by their uniform, who watched Andy scurry past and giggled in his wake like he was a boy in the need of the nearest bathroom. Andy landing among 18th century British, Reynolds, Gainsborough, and then backpedaling into 17th century Flemish, Rubens, Van Dyck, and more French, Spanish with Goya and some hopes for Don Manuel Osorio, with that bird and the 3 cats, surely a potential favorite. But only a few grandmother types gathered around, as if descendants of those Duzaniga felines, and Andy kept moving, his stomach churning excitement into dread. As Vermeer delivered no other girl interrupted, and Rembrandt's Aristotle seemed to sigh, as if Homer had nothing on his poor kid's plate. And now Andy was almost running, and he stumbled back on Bronzino's young man again, and he muttered, crap, loud enough for a guard to notice. Andy fast walking into the Italian Renaissance, with its altarpieces and annunciations and lamentations, spotting 3 galleries away, rather incongruously, Sargent's Madame X. Another good chance, he thought, but no Mademoiselle S. And as Andy turned left, Watteau, then right, Raphael, and found himself, once again, in front of Bronzino's young man, who mocked him like he was as die-hard a virgin as that virgin of virgins who hung on the opposite wall. Andy's phone went hallelujah. It was Doug. You have to come and see this bronze of a veiled dancer, Greek, like 3rd century BC, a boatload at a time ago, and they were doing this kind of stuff. Is there a Heather Tubble-like girl standing in front of it? Andy asked. No, but she should, because this is profound. Doug, keep looking. Nothing in the Impressionists? I'm lost in the old masters. It's a big museum, man. Every door is like a wormhole. Doug, yeah? Stay focused. I'm on the move. After a room full of El Grecos, Andy wandered into a large central arcade, packed with oversized genre pictures, and he was relieved to be free of old masters. It was around here that he started to notice the crowds more. Despite their genieless nature, the tour groups and the school groups and the senior groups regrouping in this area before entering the late 19th century, by far the most popular section of the museum. The galleries within bustling, 2 rows thick in front of some paintings, and Andy stared at these people, and his distraction grew until it gained the power of unexpected thought, of these strangers here admiring paintings he had known since he was a young boy, these Manets and Monets and Van Goghs, their familiarity breeding a certain kind of intimacy, almost like this was his living room, and this Degas dancers hung over his couch. Andy standing in the middle of the gallery like he was its secret patron, and he thought, enjoy, please enjoy all of this. And still he wanted to give more, so much more, wanted to touch shoulders and slap thighs. I want to give you more, he thought, watching the people turn slow circles clockwise, slow circles counterclockwise, a clockwork divided into pictures, of time compressed and composed by art. And suddenly and totally Andy understood the human impulse toward expression. The primary non-essential need after food and shelter, even before religion, this desire for curation. And just then he thought rather grandly, I am art. Knowing he was super stoned and this was nonsense, but still he thought it, I am art. And maybe for the first time he appreciated what his father did. His dad, overhearing in front of Sirach's circus sideshow, a stooped woman shouting to her too cheap to pony up for the audio guide friend, the luminous shadows endow objectively observed forms with mystery. And the friend nodded and repeated mystery, as if hoping to make the word her own. Andy watched and listened for who knows how long before Hallelujah rang him back down to earth. It was Doug again. He was in the sculpture court, freaking in front of Carpo's statue, Ugolino and his sons. It might be the scariest slab of marble I've ever seen. Any luck on your end? No. You mind if I go and hit the hot dog cart outside? No, Andy said. I'm basically out of time anyway. You want to join me? I think I'm going to wander around a bit more. Good luck with this Heather Tubble-like girl. Yeah, thanks, man. A great affection for Doug struck well within Andy. Right then he would have died for his friend. Not that this sacrifice was called for, or even a possibility, but a fantasy bubbled up in his head, of foiling a bullet with his chest. And as he drifted through the Astor Court in the American wing, the Jane meeting hall, this fantasy escalated until he was checking the ground for possible grenades, searching for annihilating grace. I could die for you, he thought rather extravagantly, for all of you, death existing as a gesture rather than an extinction. After much walking, he stumbled upon medieval art, my old teaching grounds, with its reliquary of Mary Magdalene that supposedly contains her tooth. All 10-year-olds love that tooth. I wonder if Andy heard traces of our 5th grade class joke, the boys without fail having 100 questions. Molar or incisor? Does it have a cavity? Did the tooth fairy come? Why a tooth? Why not the eyes or the tongue? I remember Andy asking, did they rip her apart after she was dead or while she was still alive? A few boys laughed, but I could tell he was serious. Did he remember even subconsciously Christ of the living dead? Or me grinning and ruffling his hair? A tooth, a relic, like a pair of old wingtip shoes. As his head loosened into a more specific view, Andy thought about leaving, but feared leaving would usher in a forgetting, or worse, would reshuffle the experience into a funny story about an older girl in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Which would be a shame, because right now this seemed like something more, though the something was already losing the reason for its ripple, like that last solid notion before falling asleep. I, myself, have roamed these galleries, looking into the eyes of impossibly young women, as if they were waiting for me, as if if they might recognize me, a late middle-aged man who wished himself younger. I have roamed these halls until bone-tired, and like Andy, have stumbled into the Robert Lehman wing. It lies hidden behind that Gothic choir screen, like a futuristic escape pod latched onto a church, a reward for the persistent, much like the Renaissance itself. With a second wind, I have orbited the galleries, inside with their Memlings and El Grecos, in a rather spectacular hang, and I've taken in Christus' A Goldsmith in His Shop, possibly St. Eligius, and Apollo's The Creation of the World and the Expulsion from Paradise. And I've stopped in my tracks in front of the Annunciation by Botticelli, though I'm less inclined to believe that Jimmy Stokes ever paused here. But Andy leaned in close to that small tempera. There seemed to be some residual heat, some traces of friction from her eyes. This is it, he thought. There was no irony in his conviction, no easy teenage joke, only a sweet and lovely painting of Gabriel kneeling and God's light passing toward the bedchamber where Mary waited humbly. And Andy was right. It is a sweet painting. The label mentions that Robert Lehman gave it as a birthday present to his father. Imagine unwrapping that. Andy's phone rang. It was Jeannie. You didn't find me, she teased. I think I did, just too late. Where? I can feel you, he told her. Where? It's like I'm standing outside your window watching. Okay, she relented, and what do you see? Love as a sad kind of fate, he said, unembarrassed. Andy might have located her among this profound company, but he was the one who prized the purity, the grace, the uniting mystery. Well, I'm sure Jeannie Stokes had been somewhere else in that museum, probably upstairs in the gloom of works on paper, among those Dürer prints, her eyes considering the block of wood and how the blade had to cut away whatever remained white, slowly turning flatness into relief. A woman sitting on a scarlet beast, full of names of blasphemy with 7 heads and 10 horns. Thanks. So you never do find out where Jeannie was in the museum, but yeah, Andy thinks it's in front of that Botticelli. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Did you or do you have a Doug Straff friend?
Don't we all? Yeah, I had a few. And they all ended up all right. That's the nice thing about Doug Straffs in the world. They generally turn out all right, and it seems like a miracle. But yeah, my Doug Straffs are doing pretty well. Do you have a Doug Straff?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, obviously, well, in class today you mentioned that you are very comfortable in that, that it's like, something like it's like a second living room. Is it like what do you think about a place that has so many different awesome works of art right next to each other? Do you ever want to accept them like separately, like different world? Like how does that?
Yeah, that's the sense I was trying to bring across, because the Met is it's very it has a weird layout, especially in those kind of in that reading section where you can't really figure out where you are. It's not really a typical order, and then they have all these galleries that individuals get in certain works of art that have to stay in those galleries. So it becomes this wormhole from going from one painting to another from different eras. So it is inherently kind of an incredibly confusing place, and also a place where there's so many little corners of it that you've never seen before, and you're shocked that it's there at all. It's kind of like the miracle of New York is that you can know the city so well, and you can suddenly notice a building that you've never noticed before, even though you've walked down that street 1,000 times. And so that's the same thing in the Metropolitan Museum is that there's so many of these little period And so it's like constructing a staircase in a way, so that every step for me, and I wish I wasn't this kind of writer, like any advice I would give to any writer is just write as fast as you can and get it done, as a draft, and don't care whether it's any good or not, just have the story down, and then start the actual work of writing. And that's hands down the best way to write, and unfortunately, it's not the way. I can't do it that way. I'm more like constructing a ladder to nowhere, so I just need to make sure every rung is solid, because I need to have that footing before I can go anywhere else. So really, when I'm finished with a draft, it's, at least for this book, it was 85% there, and then a lot of it was like the Metropolitan Museum sequence used to be much longer. I used to go into a lot more other rooms, and my editor was like, "It's great, we love all this stuff, but we don't need a full tour of the Metropolitan Museum. We can get a sense of what you're doing in just in a few lesser pages." So I'm pretty, when I get down to it, when I have a finished draft, it's pretty well done, and I do really enjoy going back and then either cutting, which is my favorite thing to do, and I read this and like, oh god, I could have cut so much more, and you can never cut too much, and then also finding those little things that you kind of didn't realize interested you or were appearing in your work, and then trying to bring those to the surface more, like little things that popped up. Like, okay, this is interesting. I don't know why it's there, but let's see if we can make it get to the surface a little bit more. So there's not, the revision process is kind of I do another couple more passes on it, and then it was kind of ready to go out. He was always, well, I had a moment where it was going to be kind of more of a standard, just go into four people's heads and do a book like that. But I felt like I've read a lot of books like that, and that didn't interest me that much. And I knew that I really wanted an unreliable narrator, since Ampersand, the book within the book, has an unreliable narrator. And I wanted the book to have lots of echoes and kind of little moments of reproduction. So in some ways, I wanted this book to echo that unreliable narrator in Ampersand. And I like unreliable narrators. I like the subtext they introduce. I like I was talking to the class about, I like when the reader has to do some of the work, to figure out, is this true? What's real? What's fiction? While still maintaining like a propulsive story that has meaning, not just gameplay. So I really wanted to do the unreliable narrators. I've never done that before. I think it's fun. And those first few books that I read that really meant something to me had, like Catcher in the Rye or Huck Finn, had that sense of not only voice but who is telling the story and what is true. And I like the idea of Philip Topping as being this character who has his nose pressed to the glass that is the Dyer family, and wanted to be a part of that, and that longing and what that represented. And then having the echo of his father and Anne Dyer, introducing those ideas as well. So yeah, Philip, pretty early on I realized that he was a narrator, and then I had to try to make him both, because I knew what his story was, and he's not the most likable guy, and sometimes he pops up and you're like, okay, I don't need to hear from you again. But I needed him to make his appearances just to kind of let you keep track of that he was telling the story. So yeah, he was always my guy. But I don't know if he wrote the book. I think someone else wrote the book. I was thinking of that. I don't know.
What kind of brainstorming did you come up with the teenage guy? Well, different universes in the museum.
Years of research. I don't know. The fun thing about writing from the point of view of a 17-year-old, especially a 17-year-old whose goal is to try to lose his virginity, is that it's a very basic want and need. And as a 17-year-old, you're allowed to go anywhere. You can have, hugely elevated thoughts, whether sober or sober. It's a melodramatic kind of period. So you go from the sentimental to the lofty within 2 sentences. And so he was just someone who was fun to write, and whenever he showed up, I was glad that he was there. And in terms of doing his dialogue, it's just kind of, the dialogue is my favorite thing to write, and so it's just trying to, make 2 characters riff off each other and just have fun.
When you're kind of planning out the novel with Philip as a narrator, would you ever think about the objective truth of what happened and then filter that through Philip, or did you always just kind of think of it as Philip's story from the get-go?
That's a great question. There is objective truth in the book, and so I'm not entirely sure what it is. No, I know. I wanted to try to do what Philip Roth does so well with those Zuckerman books, and I don't know how he does it, and I still don't. And so I just read American Pastoral, and I was so blown away by what he does with that book that I was trying to challenge myself and do something like that. And so the idea that Philip Topping does seem to have omniscience and know everything, I wanted to introduce that idea of what is real, what is not real, what is storytelling, what is imagination, and then bring in that idea that this is a book about a supposedly great author and who is perhaps telling the story. Who has the chops to tell the story? Is it Philip Topping or is it Anne Dyer? So that you don't know who's creating who, in a way. That maybe Anne Dyer is once again using the Topping family for his fiction, and that this is Anne Dyer's attempt at kind of children's story for his children in a screwed up way. And also just having Philip Topping, being able to jump into other people's heads, you have to, it's a leap, and so I wanted those questions to come up. I want people to say, there's no way you can know this. And I know a lot of people would say that and say, this book is, I can't read it because it's not realistic. But that didn't bother me.
With the staircase, the metaphor you used before, so it's one related questions. With the chapter like the one you just read, right? Is you mentioned that that's like when the idea popped up, like, oh, this is girl calls them possibly to play, and it's like, is it like, was it just the idea that kind of like you had the beginning, but did you know where it was going to end, like by the end of the chapter?
Well, I knew that he wasn't going to find her. And I knew that he was going to find a work of art that he was going to think that she was standing in front of. And I like the Annunciation because of, here's this virgin, and it was fine. It had a nice little play on it. But yeah, once you get the idea of kind of the seduction scene in the Metropolitan Museum, as well as like a chase scene, it was one of those rare instances where you get an idea that you're like, oh, this is going to be fun to write, because often it's not so much fun to write. But when you get like kind of a jazzy little sequence like this, that's why I overwrote it. That's why I had to cut a lot of pages, because it was just so much fun to be in that head and be in that moment, and to run around the Metropolitan Museum with this very solid goal of finding this woman. But yeah, and then another sequence was and for me that was kind of fun to write, was like the opening bits at the Frick Library, where you kind of have all these different types of people, and that was also fun because it had this kind of built-in energy to it. And any places in your writing, I find, where you can find, energy, you should just grab onto it, because it's so tiring to write in its weird way that if the writing can sustain you in terms of interest and getting you excited every morning to jump back in, then you're on the right track.
Did you go to that and the library to take notes, or just?
I definitely went. I was like the weird guy in the mag with a pad, and people thought I was like some sort of serious student, when I was just trying to track the exact path of where he was going and what he would possibly see and what things that he would see that would reflect well on the moment. So that was fun, good. That was a great day of writing because I wasn't writing and I was just kind of wandering the Met. And the Frick, the Frick I knew pretty well, so I could just kind of dive into that space. But once again, trying to figure out the artwork and how people were going to be placed within that scene. And then there's, so a lot of this book is about reproduction, about creating something that might be real or not real. And so there's a great moment where I'm at the Frick and I'm trying to figure out where a group of people were going to stand. And then I saw a big Goya painting called The Forgers. I was like, The Forgers? Or The Forgery, or something like that. And I was like, that's the perfect painting because it can speak to the scene, it can speak to the themes of the book, and it's really there in the corner of the Frick. So those are moments in writing where you're just like, this is great. It's like when someone's kind of whispering in your head saying, you're on the right track. It doesn't happen all that often. Yeah.
Have you read the Goldfinch, the first scene of the Goldfinch?
Yeah.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah,
when
totally.
reading, and I'm wondering about the Met being a place, in particular as a symbol of New York.
Yeah.
Or when you get trapped in, like you can't get out of it.
Yeah, that was a great opening scene.
Oh my gosh, it's so
Yeah.
amazing.
And the Goldfinch is now at the Frick, which is funny. Yeah, I love that opening scene. But it is, the Met is this, it's just a labyrinth. And you do circle, it's a very hard place to escape, which and certainly she played on that, literally.
Do you have any other advice other than writing obscurity?
Yeah, well, and also, you have to be stubborn. I was telling the class today, I was dyslexic. I couldn't, I didn't read good. And I certainly couldn't write. I mean, it was just, it was like code. And so what I was told from about the 5th grade on, and my father was this banker in New York, they're like, you should go into banking. You should not go into, and the school I went to was either bankers, lawyers, or doctors. And they were like, don't go into writing, because you can't even physically write. It was the only thing I was really interested in doing. It was the only thing I liked doing, was that act of imagination. So, I was stubborn. And I think that's, 2/3 of the battle is being as stubborn as you can be about what you want to do in terms of writing. And then there's also a tremendous amount of luck and the unfortunate aspect, which is some kind of talent. But a lot of talent is simply effort. And sort of stubbornness comes good. But, so I was very stubborn about writing, and it was the only thing I wanted to do from about the age of 13 on. So everything I did was kind of focused towards writing. Every school I went to, I made sure that I could carve out a class that I could write in, figure out some way to write. Every single, every non-writing class, the papers I would hand in would invariably be a creative. If it was history or, art history, I would use excuses to write creative papers around those topics. Just any excuse to try to, use my imagination in a creative way. And sometimes the teachers are like, this is great, because it's like they don't get those many papers like that. And other times they're like, could you just do the assignment? This is not really what we asked for you to do. I love that you did a Caravaggio's opening in a gallery, and we saw all the people there, but could you just talk about the Caravaggio painting instead? But that's what I did.
Have you experimented with writing other genres of literature, poetry, or?
No, I wish I could be a poet. I love poetry. I've done screenplay work, which is really helpful in terms of understanding motivations and that the plot is important and things should move and there should be desire and want instead of just someone staring at their own reflection in the mirror, which is a lot of my really
questions?
You talked about how it takes you a long time to write things and use your slow way. What is like your actual process? Do you have a ritual or something like you sit down to write?
I always was it Isabel Allende who like lights a candle. I always like that idea. And she writes for as long as the candle burns or something like that, which is so like wonderful. But my process is I usually I on the internet for like 5 hours. Then I think about lunch, and then I panic about lunch. Then I finally eat something, and then I write. No, it's very much I'm very much in 9 to 5. You know, I try to just sit down and see what happens, and hope that something happens. I'm not a big believer in inspiration. I think the initial thought, the idea, is all inspiration, but then it comes down to just kind of just sitting there and see what happens. So it's pretty much there's no real ritual except for a big cup of coffee. Thank you so much for coming, and let's have some brownies and grapes.